Jacob here from That Time We Woke Up in a Podcast and Had to Explain Manga, our heated adventures over analyzing manga we find interesting, aka the Over Manga Cast. This week we read the one-shot titled Goodbye Eerie by Chainsaw Man author Tatsuki Fujimoto. Just a brief heads up, as mentioned in the description, this story covers some pretty heavy subject matter. We had a real interesting deep dive into this thoughtful story, so we hope you join us and enjoy the show.
Hello everyone, and welcome once again to the Over Manga Cast. My name is Sam, and as always, at the top of the episode, we like to talk about our familiarity with the franchise we read. Though this was a one-shot, so not much franchising to talk about. I had known that this existed because thanks to our numerous experiences with Chainsaw Man, I am at least tangentially aware of most of Tatsuki Fujimoto's other work, but I had not gotten around to it. So naturally, Matt had read it and now is subjecting the podcast to it.
As I am wont to do.
Indeed. So you know what, Matt, as resident expert, what is your experience with Goodbye Eerie?
I mean, I read it when it released. It is a one-shot. There is only so much experience you can have. You either have read it or haven't. It's pretty binary as far as these questions go, really.
You know what? Excellent point. Jay, how about you?
I unfortunately never heard about this, so this was a fresh read for me.
And Jacob.
A bit of a look into my perspective, just so we have something of substance in this section, since it is a one-shot. I tend to not particularly care about like authors or actors in movies. I try to come with a fresh face to anything that I read or watch. So I didn't even know, like, you know, I'd heard in passing that, you know, that there is probably going to be a part 2 of Chainsaw Man, but I didn't know of any of Fujimoto's other series that he had done, one shot or otherwise. So when it was mentioned that this was one of the things that we should put on the podcast, it was a nice surprise to me to hear that there had been other stuff.
Alrighty. And so that is that. And I believe we can just jump right into it. This starts off with Yuta, a middle school student who has been given a cell phone for his birthday, and at the behest of his mother, who has dead anime mom disease.
In all fairness, it's not confirmed to be dead anime mom disease at this point. It progresses to that, but...
Yeah.
Yes. She has nebulous, unnamed illness that could possibly take her life at any time. So she asks to be...
But won't, because she needs to tragically degenerate over time.
Of course, of course.
It's pretty clearly cancer.
Like, yeah. They never say cancer, but it's very obviously cancer, yeah.
This isn't the beginning of Full Metal Alchemist. Edenal's mom drops over dead. They just don't say it's cancer.
Yes, so she is terminally ill and asks Yuta to use the phone to record her life so that there will be something to remember her by after she is gone. And we're given a montage of scenes of Yuta filming his mother in various circumstances and various other tidbits of his life, like his friends at school and a cat he found.
Yeah, he keeps recording stray cats.
I think now's a good time to also mention how the paneling is done in this. It is 4 rectangular panels all on top of each other going down, as if you're like watching a smartphone screen. Like that is the ratio, which is also conveniently like movie letterboxed.
Yeah, each panel is an image from the smartphone. This is something that's like laced all the way through the entire thing. I kind of want to mention it now just because of the way I ended up like interacting with this element of the story. When Yuta's mother like says, "I want you to record me," the way that it's framed is that it's like, I want you to have something to remember me by. Like,
she says almost exactly that. Like,
yeah, like and like she wants, like the way she phrases it is that my voice and the way I moved, I think, is something that she mentions. She also, even in this first moment where we see it, mentions that she wants to be filmed all the way to her death. And my immediate reaction is, that's a really, really shitty thing to ask a 12-year-old.
That sure is something to put on the shoulders of a child.
Yeah, and it's one of those ones where it's like, my immediate reaction is, does the manga know how that is? And the really clever thing is, over the course of the one-shot, the more you learn about his mother, each new piece of information that you learn about the situation reveals that the reason why it is framed so favorably in that first time that you hear it was the framing of the camera.
Oh, I love the way this one shot plays with framing. It's an entire thing.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's one of the two main points, I would say.
Like a key thing, I'll just point in here that I took away from it was the only time you see something not within that like aspect ratio of a smartphone camera is the cover, and the cover is someone's hands holding a cell phone that says "Goodbye, Eerie" by Tatsuki Fujimoto. So presumably you're watching the movie that is this manga on a smartphone, is how it's like portrayed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how it's framed.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cool. It draws you into the fiction very elegantly.
Well, and that's actually the other thing, because one of the big elements of it is it's drawing you into the fiction. And that's also a big part of the story as well, because it's kind of hard to tell what's true and what isn't. There's this, and this is outright, brought up later on by the manga itself, but there's this layer of fantasy to everything that we see. And it does a really clever job of playing with the idea of how much can you trust what you're actually watching. Like, there are some things that are so mundane they can't not be true. It primes you to question anything that feels out of place, which to some extent sort of helps and supports the whole, that's a thing for a mom to do to their child, right? Like it sets you up to think in that way, and it primes you for what comes later. You only ever get it from that camera perspective. I think some of the last couple of panels are in a slightly different ratio. Like, some of the panels are slightly bigger, but like,
yeah,
it feels dreamlike at that point.
I think also what it does is occasionally you'll get like panels that are like multiple panels put together. I think that's supposed to imply the movement of the panel is happening between those two. Not necessarily you're no longer watching a movie, because we'll get introduced into characters who will get like full body shots, but I think that's supposed to be the camera is panning.
We see the continued like montage of illness. Mom is about to die, and we get the big like tragic scene of Yuta being called by his father into the hospital, because it's like, we should probably be there for her final moments and she wants you to film it. And then
You're really downplaying that request. It's like, Yuta, your mom said she wants you to film her dying.
Yeah.
And Yuta has a very understandable reaction.
Yeah.
He turns and runs away.
I don't know. I mean, the fact that you've been filming her, effectively her decline this entire time, and the fact that he wasn't able, I understand from a child's perspective it'd be difficult, but at the same time, I just kind of, at this point, I was just like, even if he wasn't filming, I would still think he would want to be there.
Yeah.
That makes it more real. No, I totally understand why he can't handle it, because
How does that make that more real? Because to me, that was like a point of like falsifying. Because for myself, I would see running away as being real, because I would want to be there.
Oh, you would want to. Yeah, that's the thing. I understand his perspective, because being directly confronted with it means that you can't mentally deny it. You can't put up walls and defenses. One thing that the story will go into more and more with Yuta is the idea that the way that he processes things is by putting a layer of fantasy over it, and just seeing actual death in front of him, there's nothing you can do about that. That's just there. And it, for him at his age, he wouldn't have been able to process it, so he runs away.
Interesting.
Yep, running away means he never actually sees it, and that means
A lack of object permanence.
that as
Honestly, to some extent, yeah, that's
plausible deniability. It allows him to.
He never saw his mother's corpse, there is a fantastical, slim possibility that she made a miraculous recovery and ran away from the family. And that's why he never saw her again.
It like obviously it's not true.
Logical, but
and
it's not logical, but it's a child's mind. So
I know. I'm just saying, like, okay.
Yep. And then the hospital explodes.
Yeah. Because we find out that this entire first beginning set that we've been watching has been edited for a school festival, and it's on a screen as Yuta is running away from the hospital exploding. And like we then cut to the entire school auditorium looking in disgust at frankly what this movie was. Like
They're like, what?
Yeah, and I shared
What?
their disgust because it was inappropriate. I mean, I just
What? Yeah, what in the goddamn is this?
Well, see, my immediate reaction is, and I was actually like, I can understand the students reacting that way, but when the teacher reacted with such little empathy, my immediate thought is, oh, that is a cry for help. Like, that is the most blatant cry for help I have ever seen. This is someone who cannot handle what happened and is asking for someone to help him process this. And, you
I
know,
don't think he's asking for help.
well, he's not asking for help. That's why it's a cry for help. Like, it's,
yeah,
he's not consciously aware of like
that he needs,
I didn't process this well. I've made a movie that, well, I think it's really clear. The first movie he makes, he has the explosion because he didn't like the ending as it was, so he gave something cool because he'd rather have that than the real
then
ending,
what
which
real
is his mom died. Like,
I don't know. I just think I don't know. I think at 12 there'd be a different stage of maturity than this. I don't know.
I mean, everyone matures at different rates.
I know. I mean, I just my overall thing is I didn't really, I guess, relate to it the way you guys did because I don't know.
I mean, hey,
that's how it happens sometimes. Yeah, I mean, like,
that's how it be.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, this is very much a case where, I mean, this isn't how I processed when I lost my parents, but like, I can understand the thought process. The way that I handled loss in my life was more clinical, but when it comes to other things, like, you know, like me being sick or you know, like some kind of difficult situation that I you know, have to get myself out of, there are a lot of cases where I will just put on blinders and pretend bad things didn't happen, or create a scenario in my head that is completely fantastical and wrong and not true as a way of keeping myself from panicking about it. And so whilst the death of the I've dealt with that in a different way than the main character, when it comes to other problems in my life, I've done the same thing to my own detriment in some cases. So I felt nothing but sympathy for poor Yuta, that, you know, something as extravagant as the explosion at the end, to me, is a call for attention, and he needs help processing his mother's passing. And, you know, it's very much the case where it's like, not to say that like I hate the teacher or anything, but like, buddy, your job is to recognize those sorts of things. Like, I really kind of got mad at him for
I think the teacher isn't so much.
I don't know this. Is the education system, is the responsibility to report the same in Japan? Because we're placing
I
a
would
lot
have
of
no idea.
a lot of like expectation that the teachers would have the psychological training to, you know, look for these things in these students.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I guess the point would be, if nothing else, that should be a standard.
Also,
and
in all fairness, the teacher's response is actually pretty subdued. I think you might be conflating it with what his like peers' response are, because they rip into him about his. The teacher's more like, I really shouldn't have let you show this at a thing. This was not going to go over well with a middle school audience. Like, this is heavy material. This is not meant to be like shown like that. And then you end it with an explosion.
And now we're going to move on really quickly. Let's get out of here.
I guess it's him losing patience at the end is what bugged me about it.
Yeah, because he kind of does the whole thing about like, he's trying to tell him how to feel in his grief. Is just like, you can't make light of your mother. Like, how would you think your mother would want you to feel? Which actually, knowing what we know about Yuta in the end, is like, well, maybe don't say that to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, Yuta, at a very delicate part in his life, has just been thoroughly rejected by his peers. The thing he put a lot of effort into was mocked. So he does what
He's not doing
a
great.
middle schooler in crisis thinks is a viable thing, is also an artsy middle schooler in crisis, because his plan is to kill himself by throwing himself off the roof of the hospital where his mother died, to be poetic. Like he is
filming it.
Yeah, he's doing it for artistic reasons, to be like, yeah. And he films himself confessing that, like, hey, this is basically my suicide note, I'm gonna go do this, and then films him like walking up to the rooftop. And
there's such a middle schooler mentality of in this, like, video form of a suicide note, asks his father to show the video to the people who made fun of him, and like,
yeah,
that's so painful to hear.
Yeah.
I feel so bad for it, because like none of this is right, but he needs help.
He really does.
Conveniently, there is help.
Yeah. As he gets to the top of the hospital, and he's about to, do the thing, and there is a girl just kind of standing there leaning on the rail, who's like, hey, if you're gonna do this, could you at least not do it here? It'd really ruin the hospital's reputation, and they're at least decent here. There's a hospital on the other side of town where the doctors are all jerks. You could do it to them.
Which Yuta has a very understandable response of basically nothing.
Yeah, he's like, what? Hey, wait a minute, aren't you the kid who made that movie? The one about his mom dying? Yeah, that was me. All right, come with me. Wait, what? And she drags him off through town. We get several panels of just silence, of just, looking at this girl's back as she's leading him by the hand through the city, and to an abandoned factory.
And, just pulling this young teenager. He's
same age.
Yeah.
They're the same age, but it's like pulling this young boy into.
I realize I don't know how much time has passed since he started filming the movie, but like he's early teens. They're both early teens, and this person is pulling someone into an abandoned building.
The panels of them walking through the destroyed and abandoned hallways. All the glasses out of the windows, the floors are dirty. Her pausing by a door, and you're like, okay, Fujimoto, you're gonna do another whammy panel, and it's them sitting down watching a movie.
Hey, what's going on here? Shh, no talking during movies.
So who even are you? Is this place yours?
No, we're illegally trespassing.
I'll tell you in 9 hours when we're done watching movies.
And he just gives her a disgusted look, turns back to the screen, and then presumably 9 hours later, because the phone like frame goes black, and then the next one is thanks for the charger as the camera comes back. And this isn't really the start of it, but this is kind of where it's thoroughly established. Like, one of my favorite ways of determining the verisimilitude of the scene, kind of, for lack of a better word, is that when Yuta is holding the phone and filming something, his speech bubbles are panel border, as if to give a visual representation of the sound of someone talking from behind the camera.
Mm-hmm.
And even when he's, quote, behind the camera, if he's supposed to be a character in a fictional scene, as we'll see later, his speech bubble is wholly within the scene. We see that in particular when coming up a bit later, when this girl who reveals that her name is Eerie basically badgers him into creating another movie because she really liked Dead Explosion Mother.
It wasn't good, but it held my attention for that 15 minutes. I think we can work with that.
I mean, the important thing is that she does understand that the ending of that movie wasn't farcical. It was a way of coping with something too painful to lay bare. An auteur. Let's cultivate this.
So she says, I was the only person in that gym who was crying, and that's why you're going to make another movie, and we're going to make all of them bawl their eyes out at the next school festival. Several more panels of silence. Yeah, I like the sound of that. And one of the things I really like about the paneling convention in this is it serves Fujimoto's strong suit that we see a lot of in Chainsaw Man as well, of scenes of just people sitting there in silence. And because this is sort of it's emulating the frame by frame of watching a recording on a smartphone, there's tons of that to great effect.
It's paneling done in that way with intention. Like, it has the expressions carry the intent of the scene more than words would be able to.
And also lots of juxtaposition in this, particularly at the page turns. Like, again, there's a scene later where Eerie goes to meet Yuta's father, and he says, "Oh yeah, he'll talk your ear off. He's a real chatterbox." Cut to 2 pages of completely silent dinner.
That was so funny.
It was so funny.
I chuckled out loud at like the same panel on 2 pages.
Only slight variations of like Yuta's father like raising up a cup to sip a drink or whatever.
The most
maybe
awkward.
Aries moving her fork.
It's the most awkward family dinner ever.
It's the meet the girlfriend dinner.
Yep.
It translated perfectly.
Yep. But Aries' new prescription to make him a better filmmaker is he is going to watch at minimum 3 movies a day with her every day, even on days off from school, and he's going to become a filmographer, a analyst of movies, in order to understand how to make the sequel, I suppose, to Dead Explosion Mother all the better.
Hey guys, is it obvious that Fujimoto likes movies yet?
Gee, I couldn't tell. I was starting to get inklings of that, but yeah, no, this is him going full film buff.
Well, you haven't read Fire Punch, but Fire Punch goes full film buff.
Oh wow,
pretty hard.
We're gonna get the escalating film nerd curve
as we read in reverse order.
But anyway, so after that like training montage, Yuta's dad has been asking about Eerie because his son is no longer super depressed and seems to be thriving for the first time since his mother's death. So he's just like, yeah, bring her over to meet me. And they have dinner, and it's super awkward. And then he suddenly bursts out, "I don't want you making a movie with my son. It would destroy him." And then they get into a long, drawn-out fight. Pause. The dad turns to Yuta. "So is that a good take?"
And cut.
The scene you just watched wasn't acted out.
Yeah, wasn't real. And then, after that, we actually get the real conversation being had where, Yuta's father, basically voices what we'd been seeing is that, Yuta in, having this to focus on, it's given him the outlet that he needed. He's been happy since the two of them have been working on this project together.
Yeah. And
yep.
Basically, he then gets, I think this actually happened before the dinner, but whatever. Eerie has him write a script for his next movie because after the training arc, he's finally ready to, produce. He has consumed enough. Now he must produce.
Yes.
And he writes so many scripts for Eerie to keep going. They're garbage, they're garbage, they're garbage. What I liked about Dead Explosion Mother was that it was your story. These are all just stories you've heard before. I want to hear one from you. And he's just like, okay, I got an idea. What about Dead Explosion Mother? But then I meet a girl and
the extended cut.
And he wants to make a better movie to show everyone up. She's like, I don't know, that sounds kind of boring. But no, the girl's a vampire and she's also dying. So he has to film a second movie about this dying vampire girl. So that after not being able to capture the death of his mother, he can capture a death and then be able to move on with his life. And Aries just like, we can work with that.
I'm the vampire girl, aren't I? Yes, you are.
I've already been recording you constantly, so it would save on.
Yeah, it is. Then the inevitable happens, I suppose. As it is revealed that Eerie is also terminally ill at a beach. Why do all Fujimoto's heartbreaking scenes happen at beaches? Come on.
My favorite part is in the montage with filming with Eerie after it's revealed she's got a terminal illness. There's a great scene where they go to the aquarium together, and I'm like, no.
Well, the thing I really liked about the beach scene is that this is really where it starts to layer on the how much is truth, how much is fiction elements of it, because it's not overtly clear. Like even all the way to the end, there is a non-zero chance that beach scene was staged. Like regardless of what you believe by the reveals at the end of how much is a pinch of fantasy and how much really happened, it's basically impossible to know whether or not that scene happened organically or if that was part of the movie. And it really sucks you into that world and that mindset, because like it takes reality out of the equation and puts you in a pure emotional state.
Yeah, especially because it plays more with that speech bubble thing that I mentioned earlier, like from being behind
Which
the
I
camera.
hadn't noticed, by the way. That's really cool. I've been flipping through the pages, noting all the places I missed that detail.
Yep. Because on the beach scene, Yuta starts talking to her about, hey, if you're a vampire, how can you be out in the sunlight? Oh, a little bit doesn't hurt. But I spend most of my time inside watching movies anyway. And Eerie's responses are sandwiched, are like a weird blend between the two panels, where it's like the bottom of one panel and the top of another form a speech bubble of what she is saying. And it's like, we've already established that when Yuta's speech bubbles are merged with the paneling, it's supposed to be real, air quotes, because that's him talking behind the camera. And when it's inside, it's fake, air quotes, because it's him in a fictionalized scene. Eerie is now doing both.
What?
At the same time.
I took that to be Eerie is narrating a scene of them dancing in the waves together. Like, I don't think she's talking in these panels. I think that's her voice answering questions over, like, B-roll of her dancing in the waves when she then fell.
Oh.
It does end with "then let me drink your blood," which is dialogue, but like...
But I mean, like, it does the work to blend the fantasy and reality.
And it's definitely not clear on it. Like, that is one thing about this manga. It does not care about you figuring out like the truth of it. Like, that's
I was just gonna say that's the nice thing. You can try to figure out what's real and what's not, and that's a fun exercise. But what it's really about is how people process, bad things happening to them. That's the core, that's the emotional core of the story, and the thing that is meant to keep your interest.
Indeed.
And like, speaking of core emotions of the story, after Eerie falls down and she talks to Yuta in the hospital, going like, "Hey, I'm not sick. I'm not gonna get better. This isn't something you get better from. Hey, I've got something to ask for you." And Yuta's just like, "I swear if you..." And she's like, "Yeah, no, could you film me up until the exact moment I die?" And Yuta responds to that the way you probably should, considering Eerie knows.
Yeah.
Yeah. How can you ask me to do that? Who would want to do that? And he runs home.
Both fair things to say.
Yeah, can't exactly blame him for that one.
And like, he runs home. He's clearly like crying in his room, just filming the ceiling too. And what we get from the dad is that this has been multiple days because he isn't going to school. And the dad finally comes in and is like, "Hey, I finally heard what happened to Eerie. You wanna talk about it, sport?"
Oh, by the way, since you didn't make it to your mother's death, I recorded it.
You wanna watch it together?
Do you want to see? And then we get a candid shot of the mother.
Candid. It's very well framed on her.
Well, yes. Well, candid in that it is not Yuta's framing.
Yeah.
And it's her lying on the bed, wondering where he is. He won't come out of the car. He doesn't want to watch his mom die. Okay, that boy was useless until the very end. And hey Jake, you remember what you said earlier?
Yeah, I love this because like over the course, like up to this point, we've gotten little hints and glimpses, like the fact that the all the scenes that we had seen of her up to that point were ultimately framed as a movie is like, okay, so there's going to be a level of framing to the way that she had been treated up to this point, and she mentioned a couple of times that she wants to be filmed to her death, and the more overt you make it, the more icky it becomes. And then now we see the truth of the matter, and it even goes further where the father explains that his mother was awful.
It seems at times physically abusive.
Oh, I don't think it quite goes that far. He complains about she'll get mad and then give him the silent treatment. I'm sorry. If by physically abusive she means she smacked her 12-year-old son, I suppose yes. Then,
I mean, again, this is a matter of framing because, like, one of the big things that I can't help but notice is his father going in and showing him this now, especially with how legitimately understanding his father was in a lot of the there's the scene where he says, I don't want you making this movie with Eerie, and that's that's the fantasy layer, but then there's the more real layer of there seems to be more reality because this seems like it's not like this isn't a take, air quotes, where he's like, yeah, so I do legitimately have my concerns, but I'm glad that he's doing better, this is all going to be okay, right? His father seems more emotionally aware than to just show Yuta this right now. And there is the element of how much of this is a expression of how someone, because and this is actually also the point of this scene where when Yuta's father asks him, why did you make the movie? Why did you portray her so well? And he said, I wanted my memories of her to be beautiful, which, what a freaking brilliant line. But there is also the aspect of, because it is thematically fitting, and I have mentioned this in passing before, I've dealt with loss in my life. There are some cases where I will look back on a memory of a loved one who's gone, and I'll look at it from the perspective of like, wow, that was really big. I hate them, and because of the way that this story is framed, especially all the way right to the very last panel, there is that element of the literal aspect of like, was she like fully abusive? Because like there's a panel that implies that she hits him. And it's like, your mind can immediately jump to, was she physically abusive? But it's like, that's how a child might and earned like spanking or something, whether, however you feel about that. Like there's that element of, it's the way that someone is remembered. This is the dark side of that where, it's very unflattering in this moment, all of the scenes we see of Yuta's mother.
Like, the point, though, is why the dad is even bringing this up now is because he's like trying to convince him to spend the time with Eerie to continue making the movie, because he's like, yeah, no, I'm the one who had to deal with your mom when she was dying and she lashed out because I'm sure she wasn't happy with the situation. Like, there's a level of a dying person is going to be upset. They're allowed to be upset. They may lash out at people. And he was the brunt of that. And like what he tells Yuta is like, when I saw your movie, I was amazed how like nice you made her. It reminded me of the good times I had with my wife before she got sick. I get to have, when I watched your movie, I got a nice memory of her that I had maybe forgotten because I had to deal with so much negativity. And like, he's essentially saying, Eerie is coming to you because she wants to be remembered like that. She wants to have like one perfect thing that represents her, because people are like muddy and people are nuanced and they're like good and bad and a whole bunch of things. But a movie isn't that. A movie is cut and dry. A movie is what you present it as. Yeah. And Eerie sees something beautiful in that. He sees something beautiful in what he did to Yuta's mother in the form of the movie. Yuta, to a degree, sees something beautiful in what he did for his mom. Like, there's a level of self-deception, I guess, but like it's in the same way you choose to remember the good things about people because they're pleasant memories.
And that's kind of why I guess did not particularly enjoy getting this bit of information, because I felt, I don't know, I mean, it guess it comes down to what type of genre movies you like, but I was approaching it from more like a documentary standpoint, so I'm like, this is misleading.
Oh, well, don't let me break your heart on how misleading documentaries can be sometimes.
Well, that's a factor, and again, the like one of the big things that I took away from as a theme of this story is how people process something unfathomable. And one of the big elements is what's established about Yuta is that little bit of fantasy that makes it able to be swallowed is something that he needs. You know, the first time he does it, to a large extent, it really is a cry for help, but there is also that truth that, like, this is how he gets past something that he can't take. Especially at this point, the one thing for me that I really liked about the way that it was presented is it has those panels that are like it's all coming from a smartphone, and yet at the same time, despite the fact that it commits to that the whole way through, um like, it still is this element of, like, it's hard to tell what is smartphone footage. You know, like, there are some cases, like, where you have to ask, like, how did the smartphone get there? You know? And it's like, you know, like, there's cuts and edits and everything. Takes, you know, a hard, definable reality out of the equation and puts you in the emotional headspace of the characters. And that's like the whole point of the framing device.
It's literally framing. So
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
literally framing.
Yeah, I'm learning a lot. I did not exactly get those
Didn't
perspectives. Yeah.
didn't get that read.
No, not at all.
I feel like this might be a little bit on the frustrating side if you're not looking at it from a more
it's like-
auteur perspective.
Yeah, because it's like you said, you processed, you know, your own loss. I experienced loss for the first time at a much younger age, and I approach things similar to very medically and very like forthcoming. So I guess understanding that people are different, I just wasn't able to really grasp on to, you know, why would you run away from something so important?
Yeah. Yuta's way of dealing with something unfathomable is different from yours, and you know, it's like there's that aspect of
that's
it.
the way it be.
It makes it hard to relate to a character when that's kind of the entire point.
Yeah, because I
To a
was like
large
in my
extent.
head, like screaming at him, like, "Oh my gosh, you're missing this. You're going to regret it later. Oh my gosh, now I found out you're like clipping chunks of your mother away from." Like, I don't know. I just it's
Oh,
different.
gotcha. Like, you viewed the editing as like a kind of like weird.
It was
Um,
detracting from the narrative or the story of like her life, I felt. And while I understand if you were making it from like, I guess, an art piece, which is obviously what he was trying to do, I was looking at it as the fact that these are also like you're wanting to keep the memory of your mother alive. Well, the memory is the whole thing. People are flawed, and it's important to remember those as the whole, as opposed to just editing out all the good parts.
I think
Yeah,
like
looking at it from a more literal perspective.
I think that's also like a general theme of the entire manga, though, is like
Yeah.
the mutability of memory. Like, nothing you remember is ever perfect. It can be skewed, it can be changed, and like, if you're already aware that it's not perfect, why not, you know,
Why not fudge it a little, because it
Yeah.
makes it easier, you know? And it's like, you know, like that can be unhealthy, but sometimes it's what a person needs to get out of bed in the morning, you know?
to just get through the day. Yeah.
Again, like the element of it's so committed to it being that you're seeing everything through the smartphone, but there are a couple of cases where there has to be, if it is the smartphone the entire time, there has to be a point where somebody cut out a bit of footage of someone putting a smartphone down, like on a stand or something, and walking into place. Especially near the end, and this is you know, like we're rapidly approaching that, but like how committed to its framing device that it is. I don't think that this is true, like from a narrative perspective, but like theoretically, and I suppose to some extent this is actually true of the manga itself to some extent, but like this could all be fake. This could all be made up.
This could all be a movie.
Even the crowd's reactions to his movies could have been staged.
Yeah,
But
well,
like that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But that doesn't matter because it's not about the literal truth of what's happening. It's about how you feel about something that is too big for you to process.
Sort of a meta commentary on narrative.
We can definitely do a deep dive on theories at the end.
At the end, yeah, we are getting on the way to it, yeah.
But we had a bit of a drama bomb with the reveal that Yuta's mother's last words were "My son is worthless." So we get a nice change of pace with a nice happy montage of Yuta and Eerie enjoying her last moments and doing a bunch of fun things, go into the aquarium where nothing bad has ever happened.
Nothing bad's ever happened at an aquarium. Look, next panel, she's got a huge parfait. It's delicious.
And like it then slowly degrades because it shows she's in a wheelchair at some point, then she's lost her hair, then it's them. They don't have the camera on them. It's facing up to the ceiling and they're talking to each other about like what they need to do for the movie because it's clear Eerie doesn't have much time left. And they're like, well, we've got all these scenes. I could show you what I've edited so far. And Eerie's just like, I want to see the full thing. And Yuta's just like, the ending of the movie is you dying, so that can't happen. And
so
my favorite part is Yuta going like, hey, do you think we had enough kissing scenes? I don't know, you want to film more? Yeah.
Yeah. I really liked the again, speaking to the sort of the whole meta narrative idea of the creation of the movie as a way of processing emotion. Eerie asks Yuta, why did you make my character a vampire? I wanted to sprinkle in some fantasy. Plus, the first time we met, it was kind of serial killery. So, I mean,
she
it'd be a
also
lot
suggests the vampire part. So, I mean, she planted that bit of
No,
fantasy.
he suggests the vampire part.
He suggests it.
She does do a lot of creepy things.
Yeah, I thought if she sucks me dry and kills me, if it means I become sustenance for someone that's beautiful, I guess I'm okay with that.
I love that line so much because I feel like that's Fujimoto going like, yeah, no, I'll put my life into my work. Even if it kills me, I've made something beautiful. Like
layers of reality element again.
Dear listener, remember that quote because that's a key part of my theory of what's going on here, but we'll get back to that when we get to the end.
It cuts to, why did we do this anyway? I wanted you to make a movie that would make them all bawl their eyes out. Cut to the student body seeing the last image of Eerie in the hospital bed. And then next panel, all of them are crying.
Oh, man. And good on the faculty staff for letting you to submit another movie.
I mean, they probably, I would hope that they screened it this time.
Yeah.
Probably.
Hopefully. It's been a year. They forgot.
Yeah.
But then we cut to a much different scene of everyone in class going like, that was amazing. It was really good. And like he's getting the opposite reception he got the first time. And then Eerie's friend shows up again. She was the one who was the harshest because a lot of people were like, that was messed up. It was so stupid. I didn't get it. It was so sad. I didn't want to deal with it. And she was the one going like, I didn't care that it was sad. I cared that you made a mockery of your mother's death.
She mentions that because I also lost my mother, I can never forgive you for that.
Yeah, and she shows up again, and she's just like, she's Eerie's friend, and I don't think she's been mentioned, but she basically sums up their relationship right now. Is I think we were her only friends, you and me, because she was kind of a bitch. You made her seem so nice in the movie. And also, she wore glasses all the time. Yeah, she took them off when we did shoots. And she also wore a retainer. She also took that off when we did shoots. Well, at least you had a good relationship together. Oh, no, she shot me down. We were only a couple in the movie. Oh,
then you kind of over-idealized her, didn't you? Yeah. And then just more panels of silence. But I guess I'll always remember her like that, so thanks. And what a stark contrast from Yuta at the beginning.
Had to say that I kind of understood where the friend was coming from. That would have been my reaction.
It does take a few seconds to process it. It's like, okay.
Yep. And then we have another shot of Yuta, some more black panels, some more basically.
Well,
I guess this would be a black screen in the film.
No, the big thing is like the last like scene we get is some B-roll, a footage of his mom looking at the river, and then like him looking at his phone to turn it off, and then it's black, 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 and then he has that thing at the end of like having filmed a death, the protagonist was able to find closure and was able to move on with his life. The end.
And keep making movies.
Yeah.
And then it keeps going as Yuta continues that was his character in the movie. And it didn't really work out that smoothly for him in the real world, because that's the thing with narratives. They tie up neatly in a bow, but
real life is never that simple. He felt like something was missing from the film Goodbye, Eerie, and he instead of making other movies, he just continually edits this one story over and over again, feeling like there's just something missing from it.
As he goes to college, drops out of college, gets married, has a family, has a full-time job, goes through the mundanity of life.
Like, he's happy with it too. Like, it's not like he's obsessively editing the film. This is just his hobby now. He just hasn't made more movies. I'm stuck on this one.
There is a very large extent that like this is how he processed both deaths, and that this like filter of a little bit of fantasy was what he needed to go on and live a happy life.
But that doesn't happen for long.
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't last, unfortunately.
Yeah, because we get a cut to another confessional style recording of a much older Yuta saying about how one day he was driving the car and then an accident happened and his wife, daughter, and elderly father all perished. He was the only survivor.
This is kind of where I kind of also was in disbelief, because it's just too much, I guess. It was too extreme, which I understand that unfortunately incidents like these happen, but it was also just like, there was literally a moment where I had to step away and like, that is too much disbelief. That's right there.
That's also kind of how it's framed, though, is he's like, as a filmmaker going like, this would be a terrible...
but it's also the fact that he's like, but that's the point. Like, it's kind of like, now that he's presented himself as not like a professional filmmaker, but at least someone who does it casually, like at this point, for me, my read of it was, I didn't know if he was telling the truth or if he was lying to me. Like, I was just like, you're joking right now.
I think am able to believe it because it's that like not thematically appropriate. It
doesn't feel like it's a part of a story. It feels like a tragedy that happened.
But I mean, because of his past history of doing that, that's it for me. Like, he has a propensity to over-exaggerate or lie about things in the past.
It does feel melodramatic, but...
See, that's what I mean. For me, the narrative was disrupted really early on. So it's like, okay, now you're saying something else happened. Oh, but it actually should not have been interpreted that way at all. So there's more color to it. I'm like, okay, so there's this other element that piles on top of it that is very severe. Okay, I'm waiting for you to unpack this too. So it's like one after the other. He builds kind of, I don't know, as a storyteller, it makes him very difficult to believe.
Well, there's a surreality to it, and this is sort of why I say, as much as it's a fun exercise to try to figure out what in universe literally did or did not happen, it's about an emotional headspace. It's not about what literally did or didn't happen. And I'm not gonna lie, to some extent, I don't feel like I'm digging up old wounds here, but like to some extent, the fact that this is so like it is at once has this like layer of fantasy over it, but also has this like real life undercurrent, like it's like a pseudo documentary, is the reason why it doesn't bother me, which was honestly kind of my opposite problem with Denji in our first episode of Chainsaw Man, because that was just a narrative. Like, that's sort of the reason why the piling on top overwhelmed me. Like that feeling that you're having, Jay, is how I felt about Denji at first. you know.
Yeah, and I really like Chainsaw Man because it was like that. Like this, as you probably can tell, I just don't
Not
tap
the
into
biggest
that.
fan of,
No,
yeah.
I don't like. I can't tap into this literary headspace because it just doesn't make sense. It's not process for me.
Well, yeah, it's not logical is the thing. And
I mean, the other thing is Yuta is not processing this is the point.
yeah, that's
He's the entire point of this scene is he's like, that was a tragedy. I am literally unable to deal with this. All it really did was knock into my head that the entire time I've been living my life, every time I've like suffered a great loss, I couldn't deal with it like one-on-one. I had to deal with it through the lens of a camera. That's why I'm doing this interview right now with my smartphone, because I've decided I'm not going to deal with any more death in my life and I'm going to go kill myself where like
Just
this
again, an advocate for mental health because this is not healthy.
Yeah,
It's unfortunate it's taken him this long in life to process this or not process this.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's claiming Yuta is a bastion of mental health here.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good
Indeed.
assessment.
But he decides that he's going to go do this in a place that still holds memory to him. So he goes to the old factory and to the old filming room that he had with Eerie. And the couch and the projector are still there. He puts down his bag, opens it up. There's a nice hefty rope in it. And then the projector turns on. It's the end of his original video suicide note. And then it cuts to a wide shot of him there with Eerie not having not aged a day, sitting on the couch going, you're a lot older than you were back then. And I'm like, okay, Fujimoto sensei, what the hell?
Well, here's the thing for me. This is by far the most overt case. Either we're out of the smartphone or there was a cut there.
Especially because, well, for one, it's a wide shot where it was POV an instant ago, and also when he first walks into the room, we get a nice illuminated shot of the couch where Eerie is sitting. She's not there when he opens the door.
In all fairness, he does, as this is happening, go, this is a dream. And then there's 3 movies where a main plot point is seeing ghosts of people you used to know. Like,
or being a ghost.
Yeah.
He ends on Sixth Sense. He's like, wait a minute, no, that one doesn't work. The main character was the ghost in that one.
But Eerie reveals the secret of what was wrong with the movie. Like, the thing was, what you always do, Yuta, is you add a touch of fantasy to what you did. But where was the fantasy in Goodbye, Eerie? And he's like, well, I made you a vampire, obviously. And it's like, that's real. I am a vampire. How do you think I'm still so young right now? You don't understand. Human minds can only hold 200 years of memories. And when you get to the end of that hard drive, you've got to like reboot. And unfortunately, that looks a lot like someone dying. So that old body died, was reborn with a new set of memories. And I got that letter over there from the old Eerie. And luckily, I also had your little video. So I get to remember the person I was. And more importantly, I get to remember you.
Are you going to be okay with that? How do you go about knowing that everyone you know and love, you'll watch them all die? Doesn't living like that drive you to despair?
It used to, but now I have your movies to remember my past self by and to remember you by.
And every time I forget, I can remember again and again and again.
It's pretty beautiful.
Unless he didn't upload it into the cloud.
Physical media, everybody. But she does hate when people talk during movies, so either sit down and shut up or get out, won't you? Yeah, I will. Goodbye. And he walks away.
They bid each other farewell, never to, as narration says, never to meet again.
It's missing a pinch of fantasy, don't you think? He smiles, and the building fucking explodes.
It's a really cool explosion. It's
cool guys don't look at explosions walking away.
Yep.
And I have to admit, I laughed at this part too, because it's such a good, like, emotional, like, sudden tone shift that you're just like, ha!
Like, it is a panel made of catharsis, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I was very confused at this panel, I'm not gonna lie, because I was flipping through trying to figure out where he like left TNT or a grenade or something.
It's not literal.
Oh.
I'm not
Guys
joking.
don't look at explosions.
Yeah. So
Well, he brought a backpack with him.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Maybe he
I was
emptied it out.
legitimately like, when did this happen? I'm missing something. I'm not joking.
Yeah, I think 100% what we're discovering here from Jay's perspective is an attempt at a literal read of Goodbye Eerie is not the best experience.
Rather difficult, you might say.
It was difficult. It was very frustrating, and I ended up not liking the main character.
I don't necessarily think you're supposed to super like Yuta. He's very flawed.
Yes, he is. I want better for him.
You're supposed to feel sympathy for him, I guess. Because again,
I
like when
do, but I also feel sympathy for his dad and the fact that he couldn't also be there for his dad, who was obviously grieving. And I know he was young, but it's just kind of like, I feel like there should have been an inner dialogue there that was avoided. And that's something that, again, was very difficult for me to, 'cause, like, from my point of view, like, we had those conversations.
I mean, but like maybe that conversation did happen and it was just really hard and Yuta didn't want to remember it because it was tough
It
and
made it
emotional.
worse for him.
Yeah.
So it wasn't filmed and it wasn't put into the movie, the stuff that he wanted to be remembered.
Because we're definitely watching an edited cut of what happened. Like
At every point.
Like the very nature of when we find out that Eerie wore glasses, that means every time she wasn't wearing glasses was a scene they filmed.
Yep.
I just also assume that,
As far as I recall, there was not a single instance of Eerie wearing glasses anywhere in the entire one shot.
Yeah, no,
Oh, and also she wore a retainer. Practically the page before we learned that, we have a picture of her like holding her mouth open to do the like, that.
Yeah.
So surreality, constructed narrative, emotions. That it's a
Tatsuki Fujimoto work, all right?
It sure is a Tatsuki Fujimoto work.
Because it's like deep and emotional, but then it's got like that crash. Like we skipped over all the times they talk about filming each other pooping. Like,
yeah, it's got random moments of crass humor, stuff that just has to make you laugh. And when we were approaching the end of Chainsaw Man during our original reading, a couple of my friends who listen to the podcast, hi John, started reading it, and one of his comments was that by the end, Chainsaw Man kind of becomes a surrealist comedy. It's absurdism, and that is also kind of felt here. It's got an absurd nature to it, and it's talking about something incredibly heavy, the death of a parent and a friend, and it comes down to this character not processing that sort of thing, absurdism in absurd situations. How does he deal with it? It explodes. It explodes. He walks away.
I can't fathom a situation where this is true, so I'll make it something unfathomable. The explosion is a literal representation of how this person, how Yuta gets past something that is impossible to accept.
And another interesting note is in the original Goodbye Explosion, or like Explosion Mother, the explosion effects on the hospital are like cheesy After Effects things that he definitely like downloaded a rip of off the internet. Whereas the explosion that destroys the factory, it looks like a full-on, professional pyrotechnic display. So in a way, it shows literal growth of like skill and time and resources. And at the same time, it shows that like while and instead of running away, he's walking away confidently. He still processes these things in the same way.
But this isn't a cry for help. This is him moving forward. And like
this is him doing it the way he does
that. And like the way, the things that you mentioned, because it's like I immediately got the impression that the first time he ended a movie like this, it was a cry for help. He is in serious pain. He cannot handle it. Please, somebody help me. was the way I read the first explosion. And then this one, I mean, Sam, you put it so eloquently, that's why. But the second one is, okay, it's over now. I can move on. This is something that is literally behind me.
And what's the point in going back? It's all rubble.
Mm-hmm.
That's my take on it.
Anyone else got final thoughts?
In mind?
Oh man, I guess I can go into my theory then if no one else got something.
Yeah, go for it.
So like, I think a big thing, my takeaway at least, is crucial in that, like you mentioned earlier, Sam, we never see the real Eerie, the like glasses wearing, retainer wearing kind of mean person. Like she is not in the movie at all. Mm-hmm. And in fact, like Yuta seems to think his relationship with the real Eerie was like not even like notable. It was like, yeah, no, I asked her out. She turned me down. We moved on from there. Mm-hmm. So I think it's more like, I'm kind of the mindset, I don't think either of his suicide notes were real. I think those were him being dramatic for the purpose of the movie, because he goes up to the rooftop to kill himself, and that's where he meets Eerie, who is already in stage makeup. Like, she is ready to be on screen. Like, that whole scene is very convenient that she happens to be there, because that's how the plot of the movie needs. It's a very, like... Yeah, we get Eerie, like, obviously, they could have met up prior and then set up, hey, let's make a movie that's going to bawl their eyes out. I don't think he was suicidal. I think he does that for, like, dramatizing the movie to make it better. And, like, the throughput of all of it is that he gets turned down. I think he's perfectly okay with not being in a relationship with her and accepts her rejection. And then he switches his love to the movie. He's in love with the movie Eerie. And that's where I get, like, the whole thing is Eerie is the movie. And, like, the title of this manga is Goodbye Eerie, is him finding he finally needs to say goodbye to the film, because it takes a huge tragedy to really knock into his head that he didn't really process his own mother's death well, because he was working on the movie instead. He was keeping himself distanced from it. And he does the exact same thing with Eerie. He keeps himself distanced from her death. He keeps himself distanced from her. And, like, even after that movie ends, he keeps recutting it, because the second he finishes that movie, they are dead. That is final. And, like, that's why he's, for, like, years working on it still. And it takes a huge tragedy for him to realize that was not healthy. Which leads us to the second suicide note, which is framed exactly like the first, where he's just like, I've decided to end it. I think he literally says he's going to kill himself, but I think that's also just a play, because he packs up a bag and then brings the movie with him too, and goes to the abandoned place, and he puts the movie on the projector. And that's when we get Eerie shows up there. And I think that Eerie is recuts of old footage, because basically all she ever talks about isn't like anything personal to Yuta. It's all her vampire backstory that got cut from Goodbye Eerie. Like, there's just a montage of happy memories, and then she dies, and then the movie ends. And then we cut to her having all this vampire plotline resolved, because he needs to finish the movie. Yuta realizes, like, this is him not processing, and he needs to move on, and he needs to give up the movie. It needs to end so that he can, like, process grief. He needs to accept finality. And that's where we get, like, he goes to the, like, place where he, like, met Eerie to kill the movie. And that's where we get the final scene where, like, the main crux of this is, like, well, no, also earlier I mentioned the quote, like, I give all my like, I don't care if something takes all the life force and sustenance from me as long as I make something beautiful. He has been giving this movie his life force for years now. And it's time to just let it exist as something on its own, because he needs to move on. He can't let it keep sapping him dry. And, like, that's when we get, like, the final line is Yuta going to the audience after saying goodbye to Eerie, goodbye to the movie. He leaves, and he's just like, I realized why I had been recutting the movie over and over again. He wasn't processing the grief. He wasn't accepting the finality of it. So he goes out with a bang. He leaves it behind, and it ends with an explosion. And, like, I'm also kind of the mind that, like, the difference in After Effects is I think he might have actually blew up the thing. Like, I think he might have burned the movie.
He actually blew up the the building.
Well, because like that explosion seems real, as opposed to like the first explosion is very clearly like stuck on After Effects.
Mhm.
So it could even be he needs to destroy it because he needs to move on with his life. He can't deal with the like tremendous grief he just did by going further into this. And like, yeah, the ending is a finality of goodbye, Eerie. Goodbye to the movie. I mean, that's my take anyway.
I think it's a pretty good one.
Indeed.
All right. And thank you once again, everyone, for listening to the Over Manga Cast. As always, you can find us on all of your social medias where we are at Over Manga Cast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, probably a couple of others. I'm not sure.
We also have our episodes uploaded to YouTube. You can give comments on individual episodes there, and we also greatly appreciate any reviews you want to give us on your podcatcher of choice. They really help us out.
Did you have a take on Goodbye, Eerie? Did you think we're all idiots and you are smarter than us? Reach out to us at OverMangaCast on Twitter. I'd love to hear from you. I also would genuinely love to hear your takes. So if you're listening to this, go reach out to us on Twitter. Or if you're listening to this on YouTube, comment section's right below.
Yes, give us your theories. And make sure to tune in next week because, yes, at last, we are going to be reading another one of my picks. And I'm very excited because we are going to read Berserk.
Everybody loves giant swords.
Yes. The Black Swordsman Arc, volumes 1 through 3. So make sure to read that and join us next time to do some ripping and tearing. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.